The city hums, but my apartment is a tomb, a concrete box suspended 40 floors above the noise. I am a ghost in this machine, a collection of routines and empty spaces. I wake, I work, I eat alone. I stare at the blinking cursor on my screen, another line of code that means everything and nothing. My only companion is the low thrum of the servers in my closet and the crackle of an old shortwave radio. One night, the usual static gave way to something else. It was a voice, a man's voice, calm and measured, like a newsreader delivering the evening report. Rain will begin at 11:17 p.m., it said, its tone flat, devoid of emotion. A blue sedan, license plate 7 King Lincoln 4, will run the red light at the corner of 5th and Elm. I walked to the window, my window, which overlooks that exact intersection. Then, exactly as the clock on my monitor clicked to 11:17 p.m., the first drops of rain hit the glass. They came down in a sudden sheet, as if a switch had been flipped. Then I saw it. A blue sedan, its color dark under the streetlights. It approached the red light, hesitated for a fraction of a second, and then accelerated through the intersection. My legs felt weak. It was a coincidence. It had to be. But it happened again the next night. And the night after that. The radio, once a source of background noise, was now an oracle. The world outside was no longer a blur. It was a stage, and I was watching a play for which I had the script. And I, the lonely man in the high-rise tomb, was its sole audience. My world shrank to the size of my apartment, and my life revolved around the broadcasts. I bought new batteries for the radio, polished its wooden case, and treated it like a sacred object. My obsession grew like a mold in the dark corners of my mind, feeding on my isolation. The prophecies began to change. They grew darker, more personal. They were no longer about the city, they were about me. The voice said my name. It knew my name. The next morning, as I fumbled for my keys, my hand trembled. I watched, as if in slow motion, as the small metal ring slipped from my grasp and disappeared into the dark gap. Fear became my constant companion. It was a cold weight in my stomach, a tightness in my chest. I started documenting everything. I filled notebooks with the dates, times, details of each prediction, then checked them off as they came true. Arjun Sharma will accidentally shatter a coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim. And I did. Arjun Sharma will receive an eviction notice for late rent payments. It was slid under my door 2 days later. The voice knew my habits, my possessions, my financial troubles. It knew me better than I knew myself. The world was no longer a stage. It was a prison, and the voice was the warden describing my sentence. The predictions stripped away my agency, my free will. I was a puppet, and the voice on the radio was the puppet master. My paranoia festered. I covered the camera on my laptop. I checked for listening devices. I looked at my reflection and wondered who was looking back. Was it me, or was it just a character playing a part he couldn't escape? The hum of the servers felt like a whisper, and the city lights felt like eyes watching my every move. The world was no longer a stage. It was a prison, and the voice was the warden describing my sentence. Then came the broadcast that stopped my world. The voice was the same, calm and detached, but the words were a death sentence. On the 25th of September, at the stroke of midnight, Arjun Sharma will be murdered in his own apartment. It didn't say how, it didn't say by whom. It just stated it as a fact, as simple and certain as the rain at 11:17 p.m., September 25th, today. The date was seared into my brain, a brand on my consciousness. The notebooks, the lists, the checked-off prophecies were all just a prelude. This was the final act, my final act. Suddenly, the game wasn't fascinating anymore. It was terrifying. My first instinct was to run, pack a bag, leave the city, disappear. But where could I go that the voice couldn't follow? If it knew my name, my apartment, my chipped coffee mug, it knew everything. Running felt futile, like a mouse trying to outrun the hawk's shadow. The voice had predicted my every move so far. What if it had already predicted my escape? What if the next broadcast forced me back? The thought paralyzed me. The walls of my apartment, once refuge, now felt like a coffin being built around me. Nail by nail, prophecy by prophecy. Paranoia escalated into a frantic struggle for control. I had to change the script. I had to prove the voice wrong. I bolted the door, jamming a chair under the handle. I closed and locked the windows, drew the blinds tight. I armed myself with a heavy kitchen knife, cold steel, clumsy in my hand. I paced the apartment, from the bolted door to the locked windows, a caged animal waiting for the hunter. The minutes leading to midnight were an eternity. The silence in the apartment was absolute, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound. My own breathing was a roar in my ears, my heartbeat a frantic drum solo against my ribs. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, the knife resting on my lap. I faced the door, my eyes burning from staring into the darkness. I had done everything I could. The door was a fortress. The windows were sealed. No one could get in. I would survive. I would break the prophecy. I would reclaim my life from the static and the whispers. My mind raced, playing out 1,000 different scenarios. Would he pick the lock? Would he break down the door? Would he rappel down from the roof, crash through the window? Each possibility was more terrifying than the last. I was a character in a horror story, and the monster could be anything, anywhere. The paranoia was a physical thing now, a buzzing in my bones. I saw shadows move in the corners of my eyes. I heard footsteps in the apartment above, in the hallway outside. Or was it just the blood pounding in my head? 11:59, 1 minute left. My grip on the knife tightened until my knuckles were white. Sweat dripped from my forehead, stinging my eyes. This was it, the final confrontation. I was ready. I was not a puppet. I was a man fighting for his life. The voice had said I would be murdered. It didn't say I wouldn't fight back. My fear was still there, but now it was mixed with defiance. Then the clock clicked over. 12 o'clock, midnight. Nothing happened. No sound at the door. No crash of breaking glass. Only silence. A wave of confusion washed over me, followed by a dizzying, giddy relief. I had done it. I had won. Laughing, a strange, choked sound, I scrambled to my feet. The prophecy was broken. The voice was wrong. I was free. My laughter died in my throat. I stood in the middle of my living room, the knife still in my hand, the silence pressing in. I had won, but it felt hollow. The tension didn't dissipate. It just changed its shape. The adrenaline ebbed away, leaving behind a shaky, gnawing unease. Why was it so quiet? The absence of the predicted attack was more terrifying than the attack itself. It was a deviation from the script, and it left me unmoored. The story wasn't over. I felt it in my gut. The narrator had simply paused, letting the silence build before the true climax. I walked through my small apartment, my fortress, checking the locks one more time. The chair was still wedged under the door handle. The window latches were secure. Everything was as I had left it. I was safe. I was alone. The word echoed in my mind. Alone. Of course I was alone. I was always alone. But the thought carried a new sinister weight. The voice had said, Arjun Sharma will be murdered in his own apartment. It never said someone would break in. It never mentioned an intruder. The specifics were always precise, yet this one crucial detail was omitted. Why? My gaze fell upon the dark screen of the television, and I saw my reflection again. The wild-eyed man holding a knife. My heart began to pound again, but with a different kind of fear. A dawning horror, colder and sharper than before. The prophecies were never wrong, not once. They accounted for every detail, every variable. They had predicted my actions, my paranoia, my attempts to fight back. Had they also predicted this? This moment of false victory? This quiet, bewildering aftermath? The script wasn't broken. I had misunderstood my role. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The obsession, the isolation, the paranoia. It wasn't just a reaction to the prophecies. The voice didn't just tell the future, it created it. It had pushed me to this point. It had locked me in this room. It had put this knife in my hand. It had twisted my mind until I saw enemies in every shadow. It had meticulously crafted a killer. The footsteps I heard, the shadows I saw, they weren't in the hallway, they were in my head. The enemy wasn't outside the door, he was already in the room. The silence of the room became a deafening roar. Every object seemed to mock me. The bolted door, the locked windows, the knife in my hand. They were not tools of my survival, but props in my execution. The voice on the radio had been my only companion for weeks, a dark shepherd guiding its lost sheep. It whispered me into a cage of my own making, a cage of fear and paranoia. It isolated me from the world, turning my home into a pressure cooker. Slowly, methodically, it turned up the heat. The prophecies were the fuel. My sanity was the kindling. I looked at my hands, the one clutching the knife, and they seemed alien. Were these the hands of Arjun Sharma, the quiet coder, the lonely man, or the hands of the character the voice had created, a desperate, cornered man capable of anything? The line between myself and the paranoid figure blurred. It disappeared completely. I was him, the man who would be murdered, the man who would do the murdering. The prophecy wasn't a warning, it was an instruction, a line of code executing in the broken hardware of my mind. Who was I fighting? An unseen murderer, a faceless phantom from the static, or the inevitable conclusion of a story written long ago? The clock showed 12:07 a.m. The prophecy was late, or maybe I was. I walked to the full-length mirror on the back of my bedroom door. I needed to see him, see the man living in my skin, confront the enemy who'd been with me all along. My reflection, a silhouette at first, then sharpening as I drew closer. The gaunt face, the terrified eyes, the hand clutching the cold steel. He looked as scared as I was. He was the victim. He was the killer. There he was, the man from the prophecy, my murderer, trapped behind a thin sheet of glass, mimicking my every move, his eyes wide with terror and confusion. We stared across an impossible divide. Victim, perpetrator, a voice, genius of misdirection, seeking monsters outside, hiding the one growing inside. Not a prophecy of an event, a prophecy of transformation. Arjun Sharma will be murdered in his own apartment. The words echoed, the meaning twisted. Not a person named Arjun Sharma killed. The quiet coder, the lonely man, the harmless man, extinguished, murdered, replaced by a trembling, dangerous creature in the mirror. The self I thought I knew was the true victim. He would die tonight, right here in this apartment, at the hands of paranoia and fear. A psychological death, not a physical one. I raised the knife. He raised his. I saw the question in his eyes, the same question tearing me apart. Who are you? Who am I? I lunged forward. The man in the mirror rushed to meet me. Glass shattered like a gunshot. The world came back in fragments. The sharp smell of ozone from the shattered mirror. The sticky warmth spreading across my chest. The distant, mournful wail of a siren growing closer. I lay on the floor, surrounded by 1,000 versions of my own eye, my own mouth, my own terror. The pain was a dull, persistent ache, a grounding force in the chaos of my mind. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but the mystery, the true horror of it, was only just beginning to unfold. Was this real, or was it the final hallucination of a mind pushed beyond its limits? My obsession had led me here, to this moment of self-destruction. The voice on the radio was the catalyst, but the paranoia, the fear, the isolation, those were my own. It had given me a script, and I had performed my part with chilling dedication, never realizing I was both the lead actor and the stagehand, building my own gallows. The line between prophecy and psychosis had dissolved completely. The siren was louder now, right outside. I heard shouting in the hallway, the solid thud of fists on my door. NYPD, open up! The voice was real, solid, not a whisper from a static-filled speaker. How did they know? The voice on the radio never mentioned the police. This was a new, unpredicted variable. Or was it? My apartment, my sealed tomb, was about to be breached. The outside world I had shut out was coming in, and it would find... what? A man bleeding on the floor, a shattered mirror, a kitchen knife, a thought cold and clear cut through the fog of pain. What if there was no voice? What if the radio had only ever played static? What if the prophecies, the notebooks, the calendar marked in red? What if it was all a fabrication? A desperate attempt to impose a narrative on a life of empty routines and suffocating silence. A story to make the loneliness feel significant. The idea was both terrifying and, in a strange way, liberating. Was I a victim of fate, or the architect of my own elaborate, tragic delusion? In the end, it doesn't matter. The result is the same. The man I was is gone, murdered by a phantom in the static or a monster of his own creation.